The hotly contested Alabama Senate race is near the finish line, with most Republican leaders statewide saying they will vote for Roy Moore Tuesday, despite multiple sexual misconduct allegations against him. Hello, everyone. Welcome to America's News Headquarters. I'm Arthel Neville.
And hello, Arthel.
Hi, Eric.
And hello, everyone. I'm Eric Shawn. Moore's campaign says it is rolling out a robocall to Alabama voters today. And that, of course, features President Trump voicing his support of Judge Moore. This, his most direct involvement yet in backing of the Republican candidate. Right now, polls show Moore is neck and neck with his Democratic challenger, Doug Jones.
And we have team coverage on the ground in Alabama. Peter Ducey is following Doug Jones' campaign in Birmingham. But let's go first to Jonathan Serrie. He's in Montgomery with the latest on Roy Moore. So, Jonathan, what is Moore up to in the final days of the campaign?
Hi, Arthel. Well, Roy Moore is planning to rally with Steve Bannon on Monday. This is going to be the third time that the former White House chief strategist has joined Moore on the campaign trail. But in between these high-profile rallies are days where Moore holds no public events, and he's largely avoided questions from journalists, instead granting interviews to friendly commentators. This strategy is in stark contrast to his Democratic opponent, who holds public rallies and press conferences almost daily. A Moore campaign official explains that's because Doug Jones needs the mainstream media to get his name out. Roy Moore does not.
I know you're the old media and you get offended when we don't talk to you, but we've got Twitter, we've got Facebook, he's doing interviews, he's talking to people on the radio, as are all of his campaign. So, we're getting the word out, because you know what? The people of Alabama know Roy Moore.
And the Moore campaign is rallying his conservative base with TV ads highlighting social issues such as guns and abortion. Arthel?
And Moore is getting plenty of support from Republicans, but not all of them are backing him. Tell us about that, Jonathan.
Yeah, that's right. Well, President Trump, of course, recorded that robocall, which will be going out to voters shortly, the day before the election. But Senator Richard Shelby, the other Alabama senator, says that he has not voted for Roy Moore. Instead, he did a write-in candidate, voted for a write-in Republican, in fact. He appeared on CNN earlier today. He says he understands the president's desire to keep Alabama's other Senate seat in GOP control. But he simply cannot support Roy Moore. Take a listen.
I didn't vote for the Democrat or advocate for the Democrat, but I couldn't vote for Roy Moore. The state of Alabama deserves better.
And Shelby added that he has no reason to doubt Moore's accusers. Arthel?
Jonathan Serrie, thank you very much, Jonathan. Eric?
Meanwhile, Democrat Doug Jones is making a push to African-American voters this weekend. He's campaigning with both New Jersey Senator Cory Booker and former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick. Peter Ducey is live in Birmingham covering the Jones campaign with the very latest. So, Peter, exactly how is Jones trying to exploit what we just heard? Moore's absence from the campaign trail this weekend and is ducking questions from the campaign reporters.
Eric, Jones is arguing that he thinks this is, right now, a one-man race.
If I didn't know better, I wouldn't think there was anybody running against it, because you don't see Roy Moore out anywhere.
Doug Jones is maintaining a busy schedule with only about a day and a half left till people head to the polls. This afternoon, he'll have an event here in Birmingham at a campaign field office. Then tonight, Jones heads to Huntsville for an event at a Baptist church. These are Democratic parts of the state, so there is less of an effort now to introduce Jones to Republicans maybe who don't want to vote for Moore, Democrats who don't know him, and more of an effort just to get Democrats in Alabama to vote on Tuesday. Eric.
Peter, so how are the prominent Democrats he's with? How are they exactly promoting Jones?
They're trying to make the case, Eric, that Roy Moore would only represent Roy Moore supporters, whereas Doug Jones would be different.
This is not about what you stand up and say to the cameras. It's about the boring, unglamorous, everyday work of being a legislator, fighting every single day for folks, taking constituent calls, not caring if they're black or they're white. Don't let me get in trouble now. If they're gay or they're straight, it's about representing all of the people.
That's a line many nationally known Democrats have been pushing, which is notable because Doug Jones has been running on a much more moderate platform. For example, his surrogate there, Cory Booker, is a huge supporter of gun control legislation, whereas Doug Jones has radio ads out right now where he tries to reassure the state's voters that he is for the Second Amendment and he still owns a lot of guns. But the campaign is clearly trying to cast the Democrat Doug Jones as someone who is friendly with D.C. insiders, which is a complete contrast to Moore, who is openly hostile to D.C. types, including those in his own party, and that is something that makes him popular with Republican voters in this state. Eric?
Yeah, and about 4 to 8 hours to go before they have their say. Peter Doocy with the Doug Jones campaign. Thanks, Peter. Arthel?
And for more on this, Heather Cagle is here. She's a congressional reporter for Politico, also an Alabama native. We'll get to that part of the story later. Heather, I want to start here. So is the Moore campaign pitch simply, we cannot give up the Senate seat to a Democrat, and I'm the lucky guy who has the support of the president, who is very popular here? Or, excuse me, in this home stretch, is Moore doing a hard sell on issues that are to the benefit of Alabama residents, local issues?
You know, I think so. No one exactly knows what the Moore pitch is because, as the reporters just noted, he has been mostly absent from the campaign trail, apart from a couple of appearances with Steve Bannon. But I think when Moore is out there, what he's saying is, I am the Republican candidate, President Trump backs me, and I will fight everyone else in Washington, including the GOP establishment, including Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and anybody else on down. So
right. But all politics is local, as they say. So, you know, what is it that you're going to do for me here in my backyard? But let's keep going because we have lots to cover. And we'll come back to that. As you well know, no need to tell you this, you're from there. But the last time Alabama voters sent a Democrat to the Senate was in 1992. 25 years ago. That was Senator Richard Shelby, who we just heard from, who became a Republican, of course, 2 years after he was elected. But Senator Shelby, certainly one of the most conservative members of the Senate, does not support Roy Moore. He supported someone, not sure whose name he wrote in there on the ballot. Here we go, though. If Moore wins, what's the potential political loss for the GOP?
You know, I think that Republicans on the Hill are looking at Moore and they're worried about what can happen in November 2018. They think that Roy Moore will be a distraction because he'll immediately likely be under an ethics investigation that can drag out months, if not years. He's known for saying pretty controversial things before these latest allegations, and they're worried that Roy Moore will kind of trail all of their Republican incumbents and the Republicans they're putting up to try to take down vulnerable Democrats, and could even cost them control of the Senate in November.
So Real Clear Politics, speaking of Democrats, has their average there, has Roy Moore, we'll pop it up, Roy Moore up 3.8% over Democratic candidate Doug Jones. A close race, no doubt. New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick in Alabama this weekend, stumping for Jones. So what issues is Doug Jones promoting in these final hours to galvanize his supporters to voting booths on Tuesday?
So, you know, Doug Jones, what he's doing is trying not to alienate voters. He says, you know what, I may have a D by my name, I may be a Democrat, but independent Republicans, if you're uncomfortable with Roy Moore, you can come over, you can switch sides, you can vote for me this time, and I will protect your interests too. And like the commentator said earlier, Doug Jones believes in the Second Amendment. He's reiterating things like that, things that really appeal to conservative voters to kind of try to win them over. But right now, I think the real push in the final days for Doug Jones is to get out Democratic voters, particularly African-American voters, who could help win this race for him.
But again, there has to be, you know, a specific message to those voters. Again, we keep moving on here. President Trump is all in for Roy Moore. The political upside for the president is that he helps the Senate keep that seat red. What's the plausible political backlash that the president perhaps might face for his full-throated support for Roy Moore?
You know, I don't actually know what the backlash will be. I think that this sets up a conflict with him and Republican leaders on Capitol Hill. There's obviously the Republican establishment is campaigning against Roy Moore. President Trump is campaigning for Roy Moore. So if Roy Moore wins, it'll be interesting to see what dynamic happens moving forward on Capitol Hill. Do Republicans do what they say they're going to do and try to push Roy Moore out, or do they try to work with him? Do they try to bring him into the fold? How does President Trump weigh in on this if Roy Moore wins? You know, so those are all dynamics that no one knows the answer to right now. And as for the issues, I want to get back to that. I've talked to a lot of my family, my friends back home, and they do care about issues, but they say that this Moore dynamic, the allegations, Trump endorsing him, those things are overshadowing a lot of conversation about issues that they wish would take place, but they feel like they're not.
I want to pull up an excerpt from a Washington Post article and pop it on screen and show it to you. It says that supporters of Jones say with concern that a win Tuesday by the firebrand Moore would derail the state's efforts to escape its painful history and rebrand as a forward-thinking place welcoming to Fortune 500 companies and a highly educated workforce. Supporters of Moore, meanwhile, see his candidacy as a conduit for their rejection of the national media and political elites who they believe unfairly characterize or caricature their home state as a cultural backwater. You were born and raised in Alabama. Heather, what do you think the residual effects will be after this race on Alabama?
You know, I think a lot of people are worried about that. They're worried that if Roy Moore wins, and he has this history of saying incendiary things about Muslims, about gay people, things like that, they're worried how people outside of Alabama will continue to look at the state. I mean, just knowing people from Alabama growing up there, Alabama voters on both sides of the aisle are already very sensitive to the national media coming in and talking to them. They kind of automatically put their guard up because of the state's painful history. I mean, it's something that is maybe not the forefront of everybody's mind, but it's always on the back of everyone's mind. And they're always worried about being depicted as rednecks or backwater or anything like that. So they're particularly sensitive to this national media that has kind of descended upon the state, particularly right now.
Heather Cagle, good luck to all of your family there in Alabama. And thank you for joining us as a journalist. Thanks a lot,
Thank
Heather.
you. Have a good one.
Take care.
And Ardell, from the south to out west, new evacuations have been ordered overnight for that so-called Thomas wildfire that's still burning in Southern California. Right now, there are several fires out of control in the southern part of the state. Governor Jerry Brown is calling the smoke, the haze, the health impact, and the dry conditions the, quote, new normal. Well, this fire, the Thomas fire, has already destroyed more than 700 buildings.
I think I spent the rest of the afternoon over on 395 here watching it burn for about 5 hours, and there was no way to get back in, so I kind of camped out in my van.
Will Carr is in northwest of Los Angeles. He's in Carpinteria. Right now we got smoke and flames in the hills behind you, Will.
That's right, Eric. Firefighters had a break in the weather here for the past 48 hours, but overnight this fire really picked up steam. Take a look at the ridge line behind me. Now, we're in Carpinteria, about 2 hours northwest of Los Angeles, and here in Carpinteria you can see flames all across this ridge line. Now, fire crews have been working overnight to try to contain this, but that ridge line is filled with bone-dry brush. Perfect conditions for this fire. Now, right now, the winds are very low. That is good news, but we are in a red flag warning up until tonight. So the next couple of hours are critical in this fight for these firefighters. I want to bring your attention to some of the homes on this ridge line. We have a massive white home. We've been watching over the past couple of hours. The fire crews are up there doing structure containment, doing everything they can to make sure if those flames race down this hillside, they can try to protect those homes. So right now the wind's staying calm, but this fire is currently threatening 15,000 homes and businesses. So again, Eric, we are in the critical hours here to see if the fire crews can continue to up their containment numbers. This is at about 15%, or if one of those inbursts picks up, if the winds pick up and pushes it into this community, you're talking about a whole new battle. Eric.
Well, that is really dramatic. I mean, it vividly shows exactly what they're up against. Meanwhile, you're just outside of L.A. What's going on south of you in San Diego County?
Well, there's good news there with the Lilac fire. That is now 60% contained. Those containment numbers jumping overnight. But that fire has destroyed more than 180 structures. And then you may remember a couple of days ago, it also hit a horse training center. We've now learned that nearly 50 horses died in that fire, showing just how dangerous this is, because those flames hit so quickly that so many residents and the employees at that horse training facility barely had time to get out. So again, the winds have been calm in San Diego County, but they also are in that red flag warning through tonight. So we'll have to see what the conditions bring, Eric.
Oh, that is just so horrifying for those horses. Will Carr, thank you.
It really is. Well, President Trump is spending some time in Florida before he heads back to Washington. What is on his agenda for the week? We'll tell you. Plus, a major UN official engaging in rare talks with North Korea inside the rogue nation. The agreement made overseas amid intensifying rhetoric. That's coming up.
If North Korea even attempts to try and threaten the United States or any one of our allies, they will be utterly destroyed.
City of Malmö yelling anti-Jewish slogans and waving Palestinian flags to protest President Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. No one hurt in either attack, but Jewish groups are condemning the acts and demanding authorities take action.
China can do more, and we're putting as much pressure on them as we can. The last time they completely cut off the oil, North Korea came to the table. And so we've told China they've got to do more. If they don't do more, we're going to take it into our own hands, and then we'll start to deal with secondary sanctions.
Oh, that's United States Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, calling for China to tighten the pressure on North Korea. This as the United Nations itself made a little-known outreach to Pyongyang. The United Nations Undersecretary General for Political Affairs, Jeffrey Feltman, just spent 4 days in North Korea. He met with top officials of Kim Jong-un's regime. He'll be back at the UN headquarters in New York this week to brief diplomats there. Feltman is a former career American ambassador who served in both Democratic and Republican administrations. The UN says he and the North Korea's foreign minister both agreed the tensions on the peninsula are the most dangerous security facing the world today. And North Korea's news agency even claims Feltman agreed with the regime that sanctions are hurting humanitarian aid. So, did Feltman's visit help or undermine U.S. efforts to rein in Kim Jong-un? Ambassador John Bolton joins us now, as always, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, Fox News contributor, and chairman of the Gatestone Institute here in New York. So, Ambassador, isn't talking better than not talking?
Well, not in the case of North Korea. You know, they've used 25 years of international diplomacy to get to a point where they have very nearly achieved their objective of having deliverable nuclear weapons that can hit any target in the United States. Now, what exactly Jeff Feltman accomplished in this mission, we don't really know. Perhaps we'll learn more in the coming week. But in the near term, the more we talk with North Korea, the more that gets extended, the greater the likelihood they will accomplish their objective and get deliverable nuclear weapons, which has been contrary to our policy this entire time.
I mean, what do you think he could say to the Security Council behind closed doors when he meets with them?
Well, if he says anything other than he wants vigorous enforcement of the existing Security Council sanctions resolutions, I'd be very surprised. The problem is the resolutions have not produced the result we wanted. The North Koreans, as demonstrated by their most recent missile launch, continue to make progress and show no signs of letting up, despite whatever economic pain has been caused to the population. Because unlike fat and happy Western bourgeois societies that suddenly find consumer choice restricted, that doesn't affect Kim Jong-un. He couldn't care less what happens to his population, which is already living in a 25 million person prison camp.
Yeah, I mean, the 10% or so estimated starve to death because all the resources go to the regime and the nuclear weapons program, basically. I mean, do you think Feltman's visit, does it open a new line of communication or competing one with efforts by Washington?
Well, I think it must reflect some view by Secretary General Guterres that he wants to try his own diplomacy. I mean, obviously, North Korea has a mission to the UN in New York. You don't need to travel to Pyongyang and spend 4 days there, as Jeff had to do. I mean, I guess second prize is 8 days in Pyongyang. But to the extent that that it says to the North Koreans, if you simply return to the negotiating table, we will try and relieve economic pressure, that's a very bad signal, because at some point it does become in North Korea's advantage, not the U.S. advantage, North Korea's advantage, to start talking
so,
again.
I mean, are they trying to play the UN off of us?
Well, it certainly wouldn't be the first time a rogue state had tried to do that. Saddam Hussein tried it. Others have tried it as well. Depends on who's in the White House. If Jimmy Carter or Bill Clinton were in the White House, I'd say it would probably succeed, not to mention Barack Obama. I don't think it'll work with Trump. But this argument that somehow our sanctions are causing humanitarian distress does sound very, very similar to what Saddam and the UN said in both Persian Gulf conflicts.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I mean, the North Korean news agency goes further. Let me show you what they say about the visit. They say, quote, the United Nations expressed concern over the heightened situation on the Korean Peninsula and expressed a willingness to work on easing tensions. Okay, that's a good thing. But then says the U.S. policy of hostility toward the DPRK, North Korea, and its nuclear blackmail are to blame for the current tense situation. So, Ambassador, they're blaming us. I mean, why don't they look in the mirror in terms of their nuclear program and their continued missile development?
Well, you know, the North Korean news agency never ceases to amaze their ability to take arguments that have absolutely nothing to do with reality and turn them against the United States. I think it underlines, though, that they do believe that the United States now is serious about the potential use of military force. I don't know whether that will happen or not, but if there's any chance to convince China to take dramatic action, which they have not done yet, or even North Korea to see the light, a minuscule chance in my view, it will only come when they believe that the United States is both prepared to and maybe on the verge of using preemptive force.
All right, we will be reporting this week on Undersecretary Feltman's trip and what he tells the diplomats over in Turtle Bay, and get your reaction, of course, to that too. Ambassador John Bolton, as always, thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Of course. Arthel?
Russian operatives reportedly tried to contact White House Communications Director Hope Hicks after President Trump was elected. What this could mean to the Russia investigations. And a major turning point in the battle against ISIS ahead, where a victory has just been declared against the terror army. President Trump spending the afternoon at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida before he hops back on a plane to start another busy week in Washington. The president already had a packed weekend, speaking as well as drawing protests at the opening of a civil rights museum in Mississippi, and campaigning for Roy Moore, the embattled Republican running for the Alabama Senate seat vacated by Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Phil Keating is in West Palm Beach, Florida. So, Phil, I guess 60 degrees is not too cold for a few rounds of golf after all, huh?
I know. Actually, it's in the 50s right now, but South Florida woke up to a frigid temperature of 45 degrees this morning, but the skies are gorgeous, perfect for golfing. And according to the White House, President Trump is down the street golfing with Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. And aside from hitting the ball down the fairway, they are also discussing tax cut and tax reform legislation, as well as fully funding all of the president's priorities. And then they'll go back, or at least the president will, to Mar-a-Lago, the Winter White House on Palm Beach for at least a few more hours. And per the usual morning, the president is hitting his Twitter page, tweeting out this: things are going really well for our economy, a subject the fake news spends as little time as possible discussing. Stock market hit another record high. Unemployment is now at a 17-year low, and companies are coming back into the USA. Really good news, and much more to come. Followed by this tweet: getting closer and closer on the tax cut bill, shaping up even better than projected. House and Senate working very hard and smart. End result will be not only important, but special. Saturday, President Trump flew to Jackson, Mississippi for the opening ceremony of that state's new Civil Rights Museum. He toured the exhibits, which spotlight the state's slavery and segregated past and the violent struggle for equality. Several civil rights activists boycotted the event, saying President Trump has only made race relations worse since he was elected. And Friday night in Pensacola, Florida, a packed house for a Make America Great Again rally. Very enthusiastic, not just Trump, but also the crowd, many of whom drove over from nearby Alabama. And again, the president urged them to vote for Republican and accused sex predator Roy Moore on Tuesday, not Democrat Doug Jones, in that state's special Senate election. President Trump and the staff can enjoy the sunshine here and the blue skies of Florida for a few more hours, and then later this afternoon, Air Force One, which is parked over on the tarmac at the West Palm Beach Airport, will be wheels up, getting the president back to Washington and the White House by this evening. All right, Phil?
Okay, nice roundup wrap-up there, Phil Keating. Thank you.
Thanks, Arthel.
The Russia investigation of the election has revealed more efforts by Kremlin operatives to apparently reach out to a top Trump campaign and administration official. The New York Times reporting that investigators Robert Mueller questioned White House Communications Director Hope Hicks over Moscow's attempts to contact her during the transition after the election. These new revelations come amid mounting claims from Republicans and other critics of supposed political bias in the Mueller's investigation.
The intent here is not to do oversight. The intent here is nothing short of discrediting Mueller, then discrediting the Justice Department, then discrediting the FBI, then discrediting the judiciary, should the judiciary convict some of the people that Mueller has charged or may charge in the future. This is an effort to tear at the very idea that there is an objective truth.
This investigation, Griffin, has been going on for 18 months. 18 months and not one scintilla of evidence of Russian collusion or cooperation with our campaign. And I was there. I never saw it. I never heard about it. There's just no evidence.
And for more on this, we're joined by Judy Miller, who's the Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter, author, and Fox News contributor who's in sunny Florida on this Sunday. Judy, so here's the deal with Hope Hicks. The FBI goes to her at the White House and says that Russian operatives contacted her, but under different names. She apparently didn't do anything wrong. She reported the meeting to the White House counsel, Don McGahn. But it does show Russian efforts to reach out, but after the election. I mean, how significant is this, if at all?
Well, it is significant, Eric, in that it shows the breadth and the depth of Russian efforts to make contact with people in the transition. And this was, as you point out, in the transition. There's no indication as yet that they were trying to reach Hope Hicks before the election. But it still shows their determination and persistence in trying to make those contacts. Now, Donald Trump defenders say these emails suggest that the Russians had not succeeded in making serious contacts, because why else would they send such emails unsolicited to Hope Hicks? However, you could also argue the opposite, which is we know for a fact that Mike Flynn, the transition national security advisor, was in contact with Sergei Kislyak and other Russian officials. He has now pleaded guilty to those charges, but you could interpret this as a persistent, consistent effort even after Donald Trump's election to make even more contacts. So basically, it doesn't tell us much more than we've already suspected. What it does show is that Robert Mueller and the FBI were constantly monitoring all contacts between Russian officials and transition party officials, which we kind of sort of knew.
Yeah, and what's wrong with that? I mean, and also what's wrong with the Russians trying to reach out, unless it's nefarious?
Right. Well, you know, right now we do know that these emails were solicited. They were received, 6 months after the FBI opened its investigation into possible collusion or interference in this campaign. As you're right, as yet we have no hard evidence that President Trump or anyone immediately around him other than Mr. Flynn was in constant contact. We do have the meeting between Donald Trump Jr. That, too, we have talked about at great length. But basically, given how long this investigation has been going on, this is kind of front page news, but doesn't advance the story very much.
Yeah, and what's also fascinating, I think, and really interesting, I'm sure you've had experience in this with your vast Middle East and international diplomacy reporting. The reason the FBI came to Hope is that the names that were in these emails that were sent to her, and there's no evidence that she really interacted with them at all, they were not the people that they claimed to be, said the FBI. So they're basically intelligence operatives masking themselves as other people. And Judy, give us some insight from your experience. I've had that too, where you're dealing with someone you think is an academic or a scholar or some think tank person, and they really are they're a spy. I mean, they're really Boris and Natasha.
Exactly, and that's why it's very important for reporters or transition officials to always try and figure out who is telling you something and why they're telling it to you. And I think the meetings that the FBI had, the counterintelligence agents who met with Ms. Hicks, were trying to warn her that these individuals were not who they claimed to be, and that therefore she had to exercise caution. There is no indication so far in this story that broke over the weekend that Hope Hicks did anything wrong or that the Russians succeeded in recruiting her in any way. And I think we have to say that, and I'm not sure that the stories were clear enough about that.
Yeah.
We do know that she met with the FBI, that with the Mueller investigation on Thursday and Friday. We don't know whether or not these emails were the subject of that conversation.
Well, it seems that the FBI was at least trying to warn her. So I guess the only emails I get now are from Nigerian princes offering me lots of money, and I got a feeling they're not really who they say they are. So maybe the FBI will come knocking on my door. Judy Miller, good to see you as always. Thank you.
Good to see you.
All right, Eric and Judy, now on to some stories we're following overseas. Israeli forces announcing they destroyed a key cross-border attack tunnel built by the Hamas militant group that stretched from the Gaza Strip into Israeli territory. It is the second cross-border tunnel the Israeli military has detected and destroyed in 6 weeks. Meanwhile, major developments in the war against ISIS. Iraq is declaring victory over the Islamic State after years of combat.
We have achieved great victories against Daesh today. I would like today to announce the good news to all Iraqis. During the last hours, our forces have completed the liberation of Nineveh Island, Anbar, and are in full control of the Syrian-Iraqi border.
U.S.-backed Iraqi forces fought more than 3 years to regain control over nearly 1/3 of the country that had been under ISIS control.
And coming up, we're going to have a very special story. A congressman and a young cancer survivor. Well, they're coming together to pass life-saving laws on Capitol Hill. How they did it and who she is, straight ahead. All right.
A congressman and a 10-year-old cancer survivor joined forces to save lives. Sadie Keller and Texas Representative Michael McCaul have been working together, getting Congress to pass bills that help the fight against pediatric cancer. And both of them join me now in studio. I'm so happy to have you both here. Sadie, hi. Congressman, thank you for being here. I've already fallen in love with Sadie, so Congressman, pardon me if I push you to the side for a moment, no disrespect. Sadie, you are now, well, you're 10 years old now, right? I want to start off and talk about your toy drive, since we're just a few days away from weeks from Christmas. You have a toy drive. It's called Sadie's Sleigh, and this is operated through the Sadie Keller Foundation. Tell us about the toy drive.
So, well, how it all started was I was talking to my doctor wondering if Santa came to the hospital, and she said, yes, but I can never imagine being in the hospital on Christmas. So I really wanted to do something for all those childhood cancer fighters in the hospital on Christmas. So I was like, how about we do a toy drive? And the first year, my goal was to collect 300 toys, and I ended up collecting 1,300 toys from my hospital, Children's Medical Center in Dallas. And it was so amazing. And in 2016, my goal was to collect 2,600 toys, and I ended up collecting 5,000 toys.
I like the way you work. So what's your goal this year?
This year, my goal is really big, but I'm so excited about it. It is to get 10,000 toys for 4 hospitals, Children's Medical Center in Dallas and Plano, Cook Children's in Fort Worth, and Medical City.
Guess what? We're going to help you make that happen. Not that you need our help, because you are the most amazing young lady, teenager, well, not even teenager yet, 10-year-old. So let's tell them, though, if they wanted to help you reach your goal, it's the Sadie Keller Foundation.org. SadieKellerFoundation.org. You can help Sadie reach her goal. And Sadie, you're here, too, because you are a survivor yourself. You were diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. You're in remission now. You were given that news at age 7. You're 10 years old, and I want to ask you, how has being a cancer survivor changed your outlook on life?
Well, I feel like knowing about childhood cancer makes you like a better person, and because I just want to point out that kids get cancer too, and I'm a big advocate for childhood cancer, and they only get 4% of funding from the government, so I just think that that's horrible, and kids shouldn't have to go through this. And yeah, it's just very, very sad, and it's made me a better person too, because I've been through that, and it's just I like helping others.
Well, Congressman McCall, this is a story that's close to you, a personal story for you as well. Tell me, how is it that you came to be partners with Sadie?
Well, my best friend in grade school died from leukemia. I chair the Childhood Cancer Caucus. I founded it to give these children a voice in the Congress. They don't have lobbyists and special interest groups. And so through that caucus, I was introduced to Sadie. I've met a lot of children who have been afflicted with this terrible disease, and some have survived and some have not. But this is a very special girl in my life and many others because of her attitude. She's so positive. Taking a bad experience and turning it into a positive is really the life lesson, I think, for all of us. And she is so inspiring, has touched me personally, in my heart. And she is really the best lobbyist that we have. So when I had the Race for Children Act, the one to boost pediatric clinical trial studies, we brought Sadie to the Hill. And what better advocate for the cause to defeat childhood cancer than little Sadie? I think we all see her now and see what she does.
I mean, Sadie is so amazing. She has such a light. When I met you just under an hour ago in the green room, I was immediately attracted to your light, to your positivity, and that headband, I'm going to have to negotiate to get that from you maybe after the segment, but I'm so happy that you're here. We really need you. We thank you. We thank you, Congressman, as well. We need this type of advocacy. We need this type of togetherness. We need this type of harmony in our world today.
And it's a good news story coming out of Washington, where we're not hearing a lot of good news right now.
Okay, I thank you both. SadieKellerFoundation.org. Thank you both.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
Well, lawmakers in Congress reacting to the wave of sexual harassment allegations against some of their colleagues. This is Arizona Congressman Trent Franks, has become the latest to abruptly resign. Caroline Shively, live in our Washington bureau now, with the very latest on what's becoming a growing list. I mean, Caroline, so far, who has quit? And I guess there's a sense that they won't be the last to go.
There certainly is. Up here on the Capitol Hill, 3 members quit just last week, 2 Democrats and a Republican, because of sexual harassment scandals. Franks quit effective Friday after his wife was hospitalized. He reportedly offered a female staffer $5 million if she would conceive a child with him, as he and his wife were struggling with infertility. Now that second question, will he be the last? Chris Wallace asked that today on Fox News Sunday.
I've heard reports that as many as 30 or 40 members of the House and Senate may face allegations of sexual harassment.
I'm hearing those same rumors. The numbers grow each week. We've got to make sure that women who do have the courage to come forward aren't hurt.
The House and Senate have approved anti-harassment training for members and staffers. Eric?
And meanwhile, it seems that a lot of members of Congress, their deals have been secretly paid with taxpayer dollars, millions of dollars, from that Office of Compliance. So is there efforts to make that change?
There sure are. Congresswoman Barbara Comstock, she tells us she wants it to change retroactively to find out what members have already had a payout. A few deals have been revealed in the media already, like the reported $220,000 payout to an accuser of Congressman Alcee Hastings and an alleged $84,000 payment in the case of Congressman Blake Farenthold.
I think we should be naming past people, and that should be fully disclosed. I think we may need to have maybe an outside counsel come in to totally review any of these cases to make sure we get that all out there.
There is a bill currently in the House with more than 100 co-sponsors that would prohibit non-disclosure agreements as a condition of initiating a complaint from here on forward. Eric?
All right, it seems like it will be changing. Caroline, thank you. Martha?
Eric, a fiery plane crash in San Diego, killing 2 people Saturday. The small craft bursting into flames when it skidded into the back of a house on the north side of the city. The pilot was reportedly trying to land at a nearby field after the engine failed. There were 4 people on board at the time. The 2 survivors are in the hospital being treated for burns. No one was at home when the plane hit, but a dog, their pet, was killed. The FAA is investigating.
Well, meanwhile, back in Washington, it's going to be a huge week ahead on Capitol Hill for tax reform. The House and Senate Republicans will be going to conference. They're going to try to unify their tax bills, and they've got that deadline coming up for Christmas. Straight ahead, we'll tell you about the key differences that they're working on and some roadblocks that they may face.